Everyone thought my marriage was perfect, but behind those smiling photos was a prison. The night I revealed the truth on social media, my entire life exploded. If you asked anyone who knew us, they'd say we were the dream couple. My friends called him Prince Charming. My mom used to tell me I'd won the lottery, and on the surface, I believed them. Our wedding photos still get likes years later. The white dress, the perfect garden ceremony, his teary-eyed vows that made half the guests cry. We looked like a fairy tale. And for a while I clung to that image. Every date night selfie we posted, every smiling holiday picture, we weren't just sharing moments. We were performing for family, for friends, for strangers scrolling online. But what those pictures didn't show was the subtle corrections he'd whisper in my ear. "Don't post that one. You look tired." Or, "Maybe wear the blue dress next time. It makes you look slimmer." At first, it seemed harmless. He cared about appearances, sure. He wanted us to look good. But soon it wasn't just about photos. It was about control. The clothes I bought, the friends I saw, even the way I laughed in public. To everyone else, he was attentive and supportive. But when the cameras were off, I was living in a box he'd built for me. And the scariest part? I let him. Because the world thought I was lucky, and I was too ashamed to admit the truth. Everyone thought my marriage was perfect. On Instagram, we were that couple. Matching outfits on vacation, candlelit dinners, anniversary posts with captions like, "Forever," with my best friend. My DMs were full of people saying, "Couple goals." But behind those curated smiles, my life was nothing like what people imagined. It's strange, looking back now, realizing just how much of our relationship was a performance. I wasn't just living my life, I was staging it. And I think part of me wanted to believe it too. If I posted enough happy photos, maybe I could convince myself I was happy. The truth was, from the very beginning, the cracks were there. I met Daniel at a mutual friend's birthday party. He was magnetic. Everyone wanted to be around him. He made the bartender laugh, remembered everyone's names, and when he looked at you, it felt like you were the only person in the room. I was hooked instantly. He pursued me relentlessly after that. Grand gestures, flowers at work, surprise weekend getaways. My friends said, "He's the one." My mom said, "You're so lucky." And I believed it. When he proposed, it was in front of a crowd, of course. Fireworks, champagne, the whole spectacle. People clapped, strangers took videos. And the way he looked at me, it felt like a scene from a movie. How could I say no? Our wedding was the same, a fairy tale. My dad gave the sweetest toast, his. Mom cried through the vows, and Daniel kissed me like he was claiming the spotlight. The photos looked like something from a magazine. But what no one saw was the argument in the bridal suite before the ceremony. I had wanted to wear my grandmother's necklace, something sentimental. Daniel had insisted it didn't match the dress. We fought about it until I gave in, tucking the necklace back into its box while my makeup artist pretended not to listen. I told myself it didn't matter. It was just jewelry. But that was how it started, with little compromises that didn't feel like compromises until I realized I had given away more than I thought. After the wedding, life settled into a rhythm. Daniel was charming, funny, and attentive. When we were around people, he made sure I always looked polished, always smiled at the right times, always matched his energy. But behind closed doors, things were different. He corrected me constantly. "Don't slouch, it makes you look insecure. You laugh too loud, tone it down. Don't tell that story, it makes you sound silly. They sound like small things, but when it's every day, every conversation, it starts to chip away at who you are." Still, to the outside world, we were perfect. At dinners, people commented on how supportive he was. "You're so lucky, he dotes on you." On social media, our anniversary posts got hundreds of likes. Friends sent me messages saying, "I hope I find love like yours someday," and I never corrected them, because if I told the truth, what would that make me? Ungrateful, weak, crazy? So I kept posting, smiling, pretending, but deep down, I was beginning to realize that the picture-perfect marriage everyone admired was just that, a picture. And pictures don't tell the whole story. The illusion was beautiful, but illusions don't last forever, and mine was about to shatter. The cracks in my marriage didn't appear all at once. They crept in slowly, like water seeping through a wall, silent at first but powerful enough to break everything apart over time. At first I brushed things off, the way Daniel corrected me in front of others, the way he would jokingly comment about my weight, my clothes, my cooking. "Just teasing," he'd say, but his words stung. I told myself it was normal. Couples fight, right? No marriage is perfect. That's what everyone says. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One evening, a few months after our wedding, I wanted to visit my best friend, Anna. We'd been inseparable since high school, but marriage had already started, pulling me away from her. When I told Daniel I was going over, he frowned. "Why?" he asked, like it was strange. "Because I miss her," I said. "You just saw her last week," he replied. "Shouldn't you want to spend your free time with me?" The guilt trip was subtle, but it worked. I canceled on Anna, texting some excuse about being tired. Daniel smiled and pulled me into his arms. "See? Don't you feel better being here with me?" That was how it started. Little by little, my world shrank. Friends I used to see weekly became people I texted once a month. Phone calls with family shortened. And Daniel? He was always there, always watching, always reminding me that he was the most important person in my life. At first, I thought he just loved me deeply, but love doesn't feel like a leash. The control didn't stop with my social life. He took over our finances completely. "I'm better with money," he insisted. "It'll just be easier if I handle it." Soon my paycheck went straight into our joint account, and I had to ask him before I bought anything, even small things like a coffee or a book. When I questioned it, he said, "I'm protecting us. I don't want you to stress about bills." But what it really meant was that I had no independence. I started to notice how he'd get angry over small things. If dinner wasn't ready exactly when he wanted, he'd slam cabinets. If I left, laundry unfolded, he'd sigh loudly and shake his head. He never hit me, never screamed, but his anger was like a storm always brewing in the background. I lived on edge, constantly trying to predict what would set him off. And yet, when we were around people, he was perfect. He'd put his arm around me at dinner parties, refill my glass, laugh at my jokes like I was the most fascinating person in the room. Our friends envied us. My mom called me lucky. I wanted to scream every time someone said that. Lucky? I felt like I was suffocating. One night, the cracks finally split wide open. We were at a barbecue with friends, and I told a funny story about a vacation mishap we'd had. Something about Daniel getting lost on the subway. Everyone laughed. But when we got home, Daniel's face was stone. "You made me look stupid," he said. "It was just a joke," I replied, nervous. "Everyone thought it was funny." "That's not the point," he snapped. "I don't like being laughed at." The next morning, he didn't speak to me. Not a word. He went about his day as if I didn't exist. That silent treatment lasted 3 full days. By the end of it, I was begging him to talk to me, apologizing, over and over for a harmless story. And when he finally forgave me, it felt like relief. Like I had been holding my breath and could finally breathe again. That cycle became our normal. Something small would upset him. He'd withdraw or get cold. I'd panic, apologize, and do everything I could to fix it. Then he'd forgive me, and I'd feel grateful. Grateful for the man who was supposed to love me unconditionally. But it wasn't love. It was control. The worst part? I kept posting on social media like nothing was wrong. Smiling selfies, date night photos, anniversary, captions. Because if people thought my marriage was perfect, maybe I could believe it too. But the illusion was cracking. And I knew sooner or later something would happen that I couldn't ignore, something that would force me to face the truth about my marriage. And that something came sooner than I ever imagined. The breaking point wasn't a single moment. It was a buildup of 1,000 little things, piling on top of each other until the weight finally crushed me. But if I had to choose the moment where everything snapped, it was the night of our 3rd wedding anniversary. Daniel had planned everything. He loved making big shows of our milestones. Fancy dinners, expensive gifts, staged photos that he could post online to prove to the world how much he loved me. I put on the dress he chose, did my makeup the way he liked, and smiled as we sat at a restaurant that cost more than a month's rent when I was single. To everyone watching, we were the perfect couple celebrating another year of happiness. But under the table, my hands were shaking. That day, I had found something that made my stomach drop. It started when I went to grab Daniel's laptop to print something. He normally kept it locked, but that morning it was open on the counter. I wasn't snooping, I just needed to send a file to my email. But when I clicked on the browser, I saw a string of messages he hadn't closed. At first, I thought it was nothing. Work emails, group chats, but then I saw one thread that made my heart stop. It was with another woman. I froze. The messages weren't sexual, at least not the ones I saw, but they were intimate in a way that felt worse. Long conversations about feelings, him calling her his safe place, complaints about me, how dramatic I was, how I always wanted attention. And then the line that shattered me. Sometimes I think I married the wrong woman. I remember staring at the screen, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. My ears were ringing. It wasn't proof of an affair, but it was betrayal, emotional cheating at the very least, sharing parts of himself with someone else that he should have been sharing with me. I didn't confront him right away. I closed the laptop, sat on the couch, and just broke. By the time he came home, I had wiped my tears and pretended everything was normal. But inside, something shifted. At dinner that night, while he ordered wine and made the waiter laugh, I felt detached. Like I was watching our marriage from the outside, finally seeing it for what it was, a performance. A play where I was cast as the smiling wife and he was the charming husband. Halfway through dinner, he took out his phone and snapped a picture of us, leaning close, kissing my cheek. "Smile," he whispered through clenched teeth. I did. The photo went up on Instagram before dessert arrived, captioned, "3 years with my forever ma blessed." I wanted to scream. Instead, I stayed silent, because part of me was scared. Scared of what would happen if I confronted him. Scared of losing the life I had built, the identity tied to being his wife. But silence doesn't make the truth go away. 2 weeks later, I reached my limit. It was a Saturday and Daniel had gone to run errands. I was cleaning when my phone buzzed, a notification from Facebook Messenger from a woman I didn't recognize. "Hi. I don't know how to say this, but I think we need to talk about Daniel." My heart dropped. I opened the message. She explained that she had dated him years before we met. At first he was wonderful, charming, attentive, just like I remembered. But then the control started. The manipulation, the belittling. She described him in ways that mirrored my own experience so closely, it was like she was reading my diary. She ended with this: "I saw your anniversary post. You look happy, but I just need you to know. He hasn't changed. He won't change. Please take care of yourself." I sat there, phone in hand, my whole body trembling. It wasn't just me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining it. This was who he was. When Daniel came home, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I showed him the messages. I asked about the woman he'd been talking to. I demanded answers. His face darkened instantly. "Why were you going through my things?" he snapped. "I wasn't," I shouted back, louder than I had ever dared. "I just saw it. And don't you dare turn this on me. You were the one talking to her, telling her you married the wrong woman." For the first time, the mask slipped completely. His voice rose, sharp and venomous. "You're pathetic. You twist everything. Do you know how exhausting it is to deal with you? No wonder I need someone to talk to." The words cut deeper than any knife. We screamed at each other for what felt like hours. Years of pent-up resentment poured out. He accused me of being ungrateful, of embarrassing him, of ruining his life. I accused him of controlling me, of isolating me, of breaking me down piece by piece until I didn't recognize myself anymore. At one point, I thought he might hit me. His fists clenched, his face red, his chest heaving. But instead, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. My whole body shook with the realization. This wasn't marriage. This was survival. And I didn't know how much longer I could survive it. That night, I made a decision. I was done hiding. I was done pretending. And if no one believed me when I said my marriage was a prison, I was going to make them see the truth. Even if it meant burning everything down. I didn't sleep the night after our fight. I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by silence, replaying his words over and over in my head. Pathetic, exhausting. No wonder I need someone else. For years, I had been protecting his image. I had been silencing myself, curating our life into pretty little squares for strangers to double tap. I had been so desperate to convince everyone, including myself, that I was happy. But something inside me snapped that night. At 3 a.m., I opened my laptop, logged into Facebook, and began typing. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I wrote about the control, the constant corrections, the silent treatments, the financial manipulation. I wrote about how he isolated me from my friends and family. I wrote about the messages I found, about the way he told another woman he had married the wrong person, and I wrote about me, how I had become a ghost of myself, how I had smiled in pictures while crying in bathrooms, how I had pretended to be lucky when I was really trapped. My hands were shaking as I typed, but once I started, I couldn't stop. It poured out of me, years of silence breaking open like a dam. At the end, I wrote, "Everyone tells me I'm lucky. But if this is what luck looks like, I don't want it. This is the truth about my marriage. Believe me or don't. But I can't keep pretending anymore." I hit post before I could lose my nerve. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Just silence. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, wondering if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. Then, the notifications started. First, a trickle. Likes, comments, shares, then a flood. My phone buzzed nonstop as the post spread. Friends. Family, old classmates, co-workers, strangers, everyone had something to say. Some comments were supportive. "I had no idea you were going through this. You're so brave. Thank you for sharing. This hit me hard. I've been there too. Others were cruel. Stop exaggerating. He's such a good guy. Why would you humiliate your husband like this? Maybe if you were a better wife, he wouldn't look elsewhere. My family called within hours. My mom begged me to take it down. You're embarrassing us, she said, her voice trembling. Marriage isn't easy. Work it out privately. But then something happened that changed everything. I got a private message from a woman I didn't know. She wrote, "He did the same thing to me years ago. I thought I was crazy. Thank you for speaking up." Minutes later, another message. Then another. Women. Some I knew, some I didn't. Sharing eerily similar stories. Different details. Same pattern. The charm, the control, the belittling, the isolation. I wasn't alone. When Daniel saw the post, all hell broke loose. He stormed into the house, waving his phone like a weapon. His face was red, his voice shaking with rage. "How dare you?" he shouted. "Do you know what you've done? You've ruined me. Everyone thinks I'm some kind of monster because you can't keep your mouth shut." For the first time, I didn't back down. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "No, Daniel, you ruined yourself. All I did was tell the truth." He glared at me like he didn't even recognize me. And maybe he didn't, because for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. That night, he packed a bag and left. The fallout was brutal. His family called me a liar. Some of our mutual friends cut me off. At work, people whispered I was the woman who blasted her husband on Facebook, but there was also support. Old friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Women confided in me about their own marriages. Strangers sent messages of encouragement. My post had touched a nerve because my story wasn't just mine. It was a story too many people lived in silence. The weeks that followed were chaos. Lawyers, papers, counseling sessions I attended alone. Nights where I lay awake wondering if I had made a mistake. But slowly something shifted. I started reaching out to Anna again. I called my parents, not to apologize, but to set boundaries. I opened a separate bank account and put money aside for the first time in years. And most importantly, I started writing again. Not for social media this time. For me. Journals filled with thoughts, fears, dreams I had buried. Slowly, piece by piece, I began to recognize the woman in the mirror again. Daniel tried to salvage his image. He posted pictures of himself at the gym, on trips, always smiling. His captions were full of passive-aggressive quotes about betrayal and false accusations. But the damage was done. The mask was off. Our divorce was finalized months later. It wasn't clean, it wasn't amicable, but it was done. On the day the papers were signed, I walked out of the courthouse, took a deep breath, and felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I don't regret posting the truth. Not for a second. Yes, it cost me friends, reputation, even family support. But it gave me something far more important, myself. And if I could go back to that night at 3 a.m., sitting in the dark with my laptop, I would hit post again. Every single time. Because sometimes, telling the truth isn't about revenge. It isn't about hurting the person who hurt you. It's about breaking free from the lies that kept you silent. My marriage may have been a prison, but the night I revealed the truth, I unlocked the door and walked out, and I will never go back. Not every smiling picture tells the truth. Behind the filters, behind the captions, there can be a story no one dares to speak. I revealed mine, and it set me free. But what about you? Would you ever share the truth about your marriage with the world? If this story hit you hard, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss more stories like this. And let me know in the comments, what would you have done in my place?